This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of multi-practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. Today's guest is someone I'm thrilled to have on the show today. He's a dedicated leader in the field of eye care, driven by a passion for vertical integration and exceptional patient care. He's also played a pivotal role in expanding his practices into an 11-location, 24-doctor network. He's deeply invested in fostering a compassionate and empathetic environment for both patients and staff. He's the CEO and OD of Levin Eye Care in the Baltimore, Maryland area. Please welcome Dr. Richard Levin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Let's jump into our first question. Like I like to ask everyone, what was the most important thing that helped you grow your empire?
So the first thing that we did when we started, frankly, and I know it sounds crazy, is we literally just looked for Chick-fil-A. And the one thing I always noticed is there's always a line of cars around a Chick-fil-A. And so the first thing we did was I looked for Chick-fil-A's, and then at the same time got a map of all the optometrists from the Maryland State Association. And then I looked for optometrists that were 60, 65, getting up there in their locations. And then the first one we found was in an area called Perry Hall or White Marsh, Maryland. And it's literally in the parking lot of a Chick-fil-A from an older optometrist. And when we go through the details, when they first took that over, he was doing about 400 gross revenue. It was rather rough. And in first year, we did 1.2 in the same location, same space, just by leveraging the customer that Chick-fil-A has. And it took time to realize. And over as the years went by, we didn't realize it's the same customer. It's a savvy suburbanite. It's a 44-year-old married woman with 2 kids. Average household income of 120 to 130,000 is the targeted customer that Chick-fil-A hits in their sleep. Not knowing it, that's what we landed on. And then going forward, that's what we've always focused on. So to answer your question, look for Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A. It's funny that same demographic. We had another doctor on, Dr. Chris Browning. He said he even has an avatar. He calls her Ashley. And Ashley is exactly pretty much in that same vein, the same demographic. So it seems to be a continuous theme that I'm hearing from a lot of folks who have multiple locations. So that's a really cool strategy. So find a Chick-fil-A, they did all the heavy lifting for you, and then try to find doctors who may have an established presence. So you're not just starting cold, and then grow it from there. So tell me a little bit how you bridge the gap, because the doctor could have been doing that too. Why were the doctors doing that before?
Yeah, I think, the reality is when you're 65 years old and you've been doing it the same way for 25, 35 years, nothing was computerized. Sally was still at the front with her pen and pencil and the old book and erasers. And there might have been one desktop computer in the whole location. So literally the first thing we did was office mate, computerize, electronic records, bring it somewhat up to date for as cheaply as possible. And, honestly, one of the crazy things is one of the first things I did was put in that Marco refracting system and just send a different message to the community that this is a younger, cutting edge at the time. You're going back 2006. That was really new at the time. And then just drive that. And then over time, gathering the customer, the analytics, the data. But the first one, it was literally, that's what we did. He didn't have a recall strategy.
Oh,
he had nothing.
So you had a rich patient database of all those years. And really it was a matter of, so it sounds like you increased the patient volume, probably increased per patient average too. But it sounds like did you have to do a lot of excess marketing, or was it really just tapping into the existing patient base?
We took his old paper charts and I would sit there literally on Sundays and I would personally go through the paper charts and call the numbers and tell them they were due for their eye exam. Did it myself. I remember it like it was yesterday.
That's pretty good.
That alone built where we would see 3 people a day, automatically went to 7 a day. And then it just took on a life of its own.
That's awesome. Do you use similar strategies now? to grow?
Oh, thankfully now we're way more
Yeah.
sophisticated. We still look for Chick-fil-A's.
Okay.
We still get older doctors, way more sophisticated. Uh, and we've integrated. We have ophthalmology. One of the things I realized too at the time is I was sitting on a cataract ranch because he was an older doctor. We were getting a lot of cataracts rolling in, so we were seeing. I was referring out. I started tracking it. I still have the piece of paper actually. I was tracking how many cataracts I was referring out, and within the first 6 months, and we were averaging between 30 and 40 cataracts a month referred out. So a year or two goes by, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm sending out 30 cataracts a month. And back then, the reimbursement was more. And at Christmas, it was Dr. Sandler was the local ophthalmologist. I'm getting a bucket of fruit saying thank you for your referral. So I'm thinking to myself, I sent this guy, 700,000, $1 million worth of revenue, and I got a bucket of fruit. So after year two, I called him. I'm like, his name's Mike. I'm like, Mike, listen, I just sent you all this. This isn't going to work for me. We have to figure this out because I'm tracking it. Here it is. And it was paper written.
Yeah.
Um, so he looked at it and he was like, yeah, you're right. And he was a little more sophisticated with electronic records and things at the time. And then we made a deal and we made a separate company
Okay.
of where I became 50-50 partners in an ophthalmology company. And then eventually I bought the ophthalmology company and integrated the whole thing into one vertical system.
And so the initial strategy was, I'm hearing a consistent theme, data driven, right? Data driven and digitization, right? But at the same time, doing this hard work, if data's not there, the old school, like paper tracking, paper records. I remember doing that starting my career too. And not in optometry, but way back when in different fields. The, so you took first step, Chick-fil-A, just happened to stumble on the mid 40s suburban woman, a certain level of income. Now what I'm hearing is as you expanded, you had one opportunity. You found out that they were an elderly patient base because you had a lot of cataracts going out. So it sounds like, just like we're introducing you, you're hyper focused on the patients you have there and making sure their needs are met. It's almost like you're maximizing the opportunities that are within that one practice before you go to another completely separate area.
100%. I was so focused on every patient or customer in that room, in the walls, and I always just tell them we can control what happens in these walls, and just increase volume. We didn't have to do marketing and spend all. Hey, listen, at the end of the day, everything's based on trust, relationships. That only happens by seeing customers and patients in the beginning. It's there's a trust factor, and when you're good at what you do, that patient goes home and tells at the kitchen table that mom is sitting there and telling the whole family. That cost me zero, other than being a great person and connecting with the patient, right? That we all know how to do, versus, Instagram and Facebook and this mass advertising stuff that, in my opinion, builds brand, but doesn't build the actual customer sitting in your seat. That's built on trust, word of mouth. That's my opinion. And that's what we did. And we still do today.
It's interesting because you said you started doing recalls yourself. I know for a fact, actually, we've done this with my wife, who's a doctor, versus me or other staff. When the doctor calls them, it's very different versus when anyone else in the office calls them. They're definitely like, "Oh, you're a new doctor? Oh, I'll come check you out," right? Versus like, "Oh, who are you?" Right? "Oh, you work for the doctor? Okay, well, might see them, I may not."
That
Yeah,
personal touch is effing huge. And we tell everyone today, everyone that works in our company, that personal touch will never go away. And when you deliver that, they're going to keep coming.
now if I'm an optometrist and let's say I might be struggling a little bit, I've got maybe a couple locations or I have one location and maybe I'm going flat or decreasing a little bit. I'm not sure what's going on. How do I know if I have opportunity with my existing patient base, or how do I know if I need more patients? Like, how do you think about that problem in your offices?
Great question. So number one, and I've made this mistake never expand until you have the first one down, then the next two, and it gets harder and harder as you go. It's if you're stale, if it's flat or going backwards, there's an internal issue,
Mm.
guaranteed. And it's not that hard. So we've mapped out, and I actually have a picture of it. that we wrote on the wall, the entire process of what happens when
Yeah.
someone walks into the door to when they leave the door. So what I would encourage people to do is map out the process. Don't reinvent the wheel, right? And if you're flat or going backwards, there is a guaranteed problem in that process. Guaranteed. And the easiest one, well, look, it could be a million things. We can't go into this. It's a big conversation. The
Yeah.
one easy one up top, high level, is how you're treating the customer and the patient. And if you have one bad apple sitting there, that can destroy everything. That's low hanging fruit. Outside of that, dig into your process and it's there. The answer is there, and it won't take long to find. If you bring your people in that work in your location and you have it on the wall and you talk through it, within 30 minutes, you'll know it.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because what I'm also hearing is that your process should also support your patient base, right? So my background is actually Lean Six Sigma, and all that fun stuff. So that you just made me cry inside. So that's amazing. But the matching what the patients want to what your process is. So back to the cataract example, right? You basically said, why do I have to have a technically it's a worse patient experience, even though you're different from a revenue standpoint, but it's not great having to go somewhere else, cataracts, and come back. It's nicer for the patient to have it in one place. So by you saying like now it's under kind of one roof or managed more seamlessly from an electronic record standpoint at the back end, I'm sure that patient experience is better. So it was kind of a win-win for everyone there by looking at the process, by looking at the revenues and making it a better experience for that particular patient.
100%. But that took years,
Yeah.
right? It was rough and there's still issues, right? Nothing's perfect. But the way I look at this, right? If you look at the value of your company, you have your optical, like your routine vision business. You have a medical business. If you have ophthalmology or not, there's still medical billing or something you're doing, which I would encourage everyone to look at because it's not as profitable as we're taught to think that it is, in my opinion. We can talk through that. But the third thing that no one ever looks at is, what are you referring out? And until you know what that number is, it's massive. And that third part of the business costs you zero. And what company would give their inventory away? And I hate to talk in these terms, but it's true, right? If I have a cataract, why would I give $1,000 or $2,000 in upgraded implants, $7,000 to an ophthalmologist, and literally get a bucket of fruit in return, right? So there's a value there, and I would encourage everyone to track not only capture rates internally on their retail side, but what's your referral business? So one of the things that we know, and I think it holds true, is 7 out of every 10 people that walk in our door have to have some sort of capture experience
Hmm.
between glasses, contacts, or referred in-house to ophthalmology.
Okay.
So 7 out of 10 I know in our company get one of those experiences. 3 out of 10 walk. I would love to be 10 out of 10. If someone has a great idea, I love to hear it. And I learn stuff every day to bump that number up. But I would definitely encourage people to look at what they're referring out because it's a scary number.
Yeah.
So we've actually quantified it. And as of last year, geez, we kept, and there's still leakage, trust me. In-house referrals from our own optometrist to our ophthalmologist was $4 million.
Oh, wow. And just for the sake, because I know a lot of folks don't know the business side of ophthalmology. If you can share just rough numbers, like cataract is roughly this much, so they can start doing their own calculations, or glaucoma is this much, whatever it might be. If they had it in-house, what are the ones you look at, and can you share some numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. So a cataract, if they have a standard IOL, a standard implant, call it 650 to 700 per eye.
Okay.
Where we really go, where you can really leverage cataracts is when they get upgraded implants, whether it's Panoptics or one of these
Yeah.
light adjustables. Then you're talking about $7,000-8,000. You lose $2,000 to cost of goods, but that becomes a $5,000 referral.
Yep.
Cataracts that up very, very quick.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I've also believed, and I think we all think this is true, we're always told from the ophthalmology groups, oh, we always say, oh, the ophthalmologist Smith down the street, he's the greatest guy in the world. What are they doing in return? like nothing. And it's like, why are we taught that that's okay? So it becomes upsetting at some level because now I know what these guys are making on the other side. So to answer your question on the cataract, 6 to 700 per eye between A scan and visits. So call it about $1,500 for bilateral cataracts if they don't get upgraded. They get upgraded, you're in the $7,000 range.
So a blended rate for the sake of just calculation, 2,500 per patient, just to make it simple. I think it would be a good estimate. Maybe give or take. If you want to be conservative, use the 1,500. If you want to be a little more reasonable with the upgrades, by 2,500, as you can expect it per cataract patient. And then what are the other ones that you glaucoma, I guess?
Yep. So glaucoma is the same codes as optometry, right? But you get
Everything.
your visual fields, your OCTs. Takes time. And honestly, this opens a conversation of for an optometrist, we're always taught, oh, medical, medical, medical. But if I look at my average medical reimbursement to see a patient, do a visual field, do an OCT, okay, $150. Congratulations. Or a routine patient in certain locations is 300 with a fifth of the effort. So if I can see a VSP patient and get 300, why would I lock my time in doing all this medical stuff for half the amount? So from a business perspective, and until someone convinces me otherwise, we're taught do medical, 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 but I've never seen an optometrist anywhere in the country, and I would love to speak to one that only does medical, that makes a nice living, that doesn't sell retail.
I haven't either yet.
But we're
Yeah,
taught that's what to
yeah,
do. You're medical,
yeah.
medical, medical, and all of a sudden we become gophers for these ophthalmology groups. I don't think that's okay.
I love the perspective. So just in cataracts, so 2,500, and just a quick back of the envelope math, ophthalmologists cost whatever a week, a month, a year, right? So if you can do a quick cost calculation and breakdown, if you partner with someone, how much more is out to you, and how much
Right.
valuable is that to your patients?
So our ophthalmologists are employees in the company. We don't pay them fair market value to come into our office and rent space.
Yeah.
They're under our umbrella, and the average across the country is they get about 30. They collect about 30 to 35% of what they collect.
Okay.
A
Gotcha.
good ophthalmologist does $1 million. That's an ophthalmologist that does 30 to maybe 40 cataracts a month and works normal hours with their vacation. A good solid surgical ophthalmologist will do $1 million. They'll take home 350. That's ballpark. That's national average.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So $1 million in total revenue generated, 350 take home. Okay. That's pretty good.
Yep.
So let's I could talk all day about this. Super interesting. Let's talk a little bit more about your journey too. Like, what were some of the things as you were growing? Because you've been quite, the journey's been pretty vast for you. What were some of the things you didn't expect as you were building your empire that happened?
Man, you pay a price.
Yeah.
So one of the things, and looking back, it's thank God I didn't know because I wouldn't. It's been painful, right? But hopefully the upside's there at the end of this. So I think the pivotal point is when you get to the 4 million revenue mark, whether that's 3 locations, 4 locations. When you hit that mark, if you don't have back end CFO, a very strong finance person, you can actually put yourself out of business.
Interesting. So that was a 3-4 location mark, roughly about 4
Yes,
5-ish million.
we hit a bump there, and then at the 7-ish mark was even a bigger bump.
7 locations or million in revenue?
7 to 8 million. Yeah, that was the big one.
Okay.
That one is go big or go home because you got to borrow millions of dollars.
Yeah.
It's not as simple just opening. You got to connect everything. Just electronic records, everything. It's expensive.
You got to have a full functioning back office, and everything's got to tie in. It's got to be on point because you're just going to scale your issues, right? And that's kind of you hit that glass ceiling of complexity, right? People don't see it coming, but boom, you hit it. And yeah, I think usually it happens for optometrists. We've experienced around about $1 million around there, around 2-ish. If you have $1 million per office, roughly, and then again around 2-ish per office, and then 5 seems to be the other breakpoint, roughly around there. So most businesses actually around 5 million in revenue have a real big challenge to get through that. And then tell me your perspective on this. I've always heard it's around when you get to that point, it's more around the people than anything else, right? You got to have the right high caliber people to get you
That's
over
right.
that hump. Is that what you found?
100%. And you got to get these ophthalmologists and optometrists. Then you're talking about culture,
Yeah.
right? So, but good process, good back end, good finance breeds good culture because everything's running smoothly. When everyone can log into the computer and see what they brought in for the day, the week, the month, and it's completely transparent. They know what they're going to get paid. They know what their bonus is. It's all there on a dashboard. They can log in anytime and look at it. That um, sophistication brings culture because people respect it, and it's open, it's honest, clean contracts, never lying, being honest, living the right way and doing the right thing. The minute you go off that, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I hear you. It's just so much easier just being. I'm the same way. Yeah, I mean, everyone kind of already knows what they make because we're not secretive about our pay ranges and pay bands. So if you really wanted to, you kind of figure out who gets paid what in our offices. But
Yeah.
it's we find it much easier. Life is much easier, more transparent. Um, so tell me a little bit about what drove you to grow this empire of yours, like all these locations. I mean, it's a lot of work, and I can hear it in your voice, like, oh man, it was tough. Like, what really drove that?
Yeah. So I think that's a good. There's always an internal drive that you just don't want to sit there and just sit still, right? So
Yeah,
you always want to get better, get better, get better. The bad part is you don't know what you don't know, and where it got complicated, right? Is you can have this drive, but banking, getting the right loans, if you bring in an investor, the right deals, how to meet covenants. So the conversation changes from being an optometrist to finance. So there's an internal drive to make an impact, not just for me, but on other people, right? Because
yeah,
we have people internally, right, that we help, that they can go home and they can buy a house and they can buy a car and they can send their kids to school. So there's there's so much of that
yeah.
that I could tell you story after story that they have each other's back. So when you build that, it becomes addicting because you're seeing people connect and help other people in every way possible. And it's like this business is the vehicle to allow people to be bigger and better than they ever thought they could be, including this one.
And, I'm hearing a theme of people are really important, both for your patients and your staff. You mentioned that one of your strategies is really, really take care of the patients too. I wanted to back up one step because I wanted to ask a question. If I'm an optometrist and I want to know, am I serving my patients better? What questions can I ask my patients? Like while I'm in the chair, what do you find that's helpful to really get the information that I need to know? Obviously, you got to ask a bunch of people. You can't just rely on one person. But if I'm going to ask some questions, what are some things that I can ask them to really understand? Am I doing the right by my patients?
So, one of the things that I personally do, and we run training sessions internally, right? Because we're all different,
Yeah.
but you have to connect, right? So, I always, if a guy's wearing a Ravens t shirt, did you see the Ravens game this weekend? And automatically you just connected. So, we always look for that one thing, it's always there. To connect with. And it's true, right? It's got to be real because I like the Ravens, I like the Orioles. So there's always something. So I always get that open ended thing that, and then all of a sudden you're connected before I ever do the eye exam. Because if the autorefract and optosin is already done, I'm spending more of my time on that connection because that's the driver, right? You can find a peripheral retinal hole and all this stuff and wonderful, but if you don't have that personality, you don't connect, and that patient's the sad thing is we get judged by how they see.
Yeah.
You can find a peripheral retinal hole, right, and think you're the greatest thing in the world and send them the retina. But if you give them the wrong prescription, you stink. So there is a heavy, you have to be great at everything, but the prescription we have to nail.
Hmm.
So the prescription, the medical, and connecting. And when you connect, the eye exam becomes way more enjoyable for everyone because then I'm enjoying talking to them about what we have in common. So if someone said to me, "What's the biggest practice builder?" It's connecting, and I always do it with open-ended questions and try to find that one, everyone's going to connect on something, is finding what that is.
So what I'm hearing is if someone wants to dig in deeper with objective data, the net promoter score would be a good one to do, or something like, hey, or number of referrals you're getting. That's the ultimate indicator of connection if you get referrals. But maybe Google reviews and net promoter score, or just a survey is a proxy for that, or how the relationship is with the office. And then I also heard number of redos might actually be a good indicator too, because hey, how many times are they having come back because of perception that we messed up? Either we did with the refraction or lab or something messed up that we
That's
didn't catch. To me, that's kind of all falls in one bucket. They don't care where they happen. They just know that, hey, your office messed it
our
up.
fault.
Yeah,
That's
no matter what it is. So that's interesting. That I wouldn't have thought that those are indicators of patient satisfaction. That's interesting. Um, well, cool. So shifting gears a little bit, you have a lot of offices, and I'm sure you're feeling the pinch of labor challenges like everyone else, reimbursement challenges. How are you dealing with both of those challenges? Anything that you can share with that's not proprietary with the audience?
So one of the things we did, and this is truly amazing, and I'm actually amazed by it myself. So the recruiting and retaining, especially optometrists, has become very difficult, right? We all know that because medical, a lot of them go and work for these ophthalmology practices. So to get a good optometrist, so one of the things we did across the board was we looked at the amount of patients we see on Saturdays across all locations.
Okay.
And we said, if we cut out Saturdays, and I'm making up a number, 50 patients across the locations, we see 50 people on Saturdays, and we know what the average customers were. We said, if we close Saturdays, because we know everyone's satisfaction goes up, doctors, staff, everyone, can we roll those 50 people into the week and you're back to square one and you're at a 4-day work week versus a 5 or 6-day work week, right? So we eliminated Saturdays. We opened up an hour earlier and an hour later at all locations. The 50 people that we missed on Saturdays has turned into 100 come in during the week
Oh
because
wow,
you opened up more exam slots than what you had
interesting.
on Saturdays because the doctor's there anyway.
That's interesting. So your efficiency went up, and you actually got better. Yeah, that's actually really the first time I've heard that strategy. Hey, just staff less to help with the staffing problem. If you go from 6 to 4, that's what, a third less staffing requirement.
That's right. And we packed the time we're there. So we told people, look, it's going to get a little more, it's a little harder, but you now pick a day off. So you're off one weekday and every weekend. So when Friday afternoon hits, Friday, you're done. And we just recruited 2 optometrists in from competitors just by telling them that. Because I think we're at the point where the salaries are pretty stable amongst all companies, very close, that now it becomes about lifestyle and time with families and time off. Because I think that's being valued more, which is great. I value it myself. And the recruiting and the retention remains to be seen because we just started this. But the recruiting, we just within the past 2 weeks, getting an optometrist is hard. We
Yeah.
just signed 2 of them
Oh, wow.
like that,
That's
based off
impressive.
that. I just gave away the secret
I know
sauce.
that's pretty good. We're gonna have to look at our numbers. Like, hey, should be closed though. So question around what about non-doctor staff? Are you having challenges there as well?
For sure.
Yeah.
And right, there's no secret weapon there. I think it comes down to everything we've talked about, which is sophistication, culture, honesty, treating people the right way. And when you breed that, it's going to bring culture, them helping each other. We lose some. I mean, everyone does. But as a whole, our core really stays intact. I would say 7 out of every 10 are really entrenched with each other, and then the rest bounce
Okay. Interesting. Well, that's pretty good. You have a good solid core team. That's
for sure. And we have over 100 people, so we track this as closely as we can.
yeah. That's so yeah. You got a good amount. So you kind of mentioned, I think, a little bit of how you're dealing with reimbursements and insurance. You basically brought in some ophthalmology, focus on a little bit of optical is really a focus for you all, and the 30% 70% capture rate, either contact glasses or medical referral. Um, what else are you doing with that? Anything else that you can share that you're doing around that?
Yeah, so we have gotten more sophisticated in the way we, let's call it, sell product.
Okay.
So contact lenses, we sell about 150 to $200,000 worth of contacts a month.
Yep.
And what we've done, we have it on our website, but that's very small driver. I have 2 people on the West Coast that are taking calls at 7 at night,
Yeah.
8 at night, East Coast time, but on the West Coast, it's 3 and 4 o'clock. We're not missing those calls where people then want their prescriptions and they're on 1-800 contact. So we're still, I don't know our exact loss rate, but I know the increase in sales by having 2 people sit on the West Coast,
Interesting.
working from home, selling contacts all day. So they average, one of them averages probably about $2,000 a day,
Oh, wow.
just selling contacts on calls that are overflows, that working on call center stuff that get sent out that we would have missed.
Yeah.
So that's a big number.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about four
So,
annual supplies, 4 to 5 annual supplies we started
yeah,
working selling. Yeah.
and that just by paying attention to when are these people calling? And you'd be shocked if you close your office at 5 o'clock. Does anyone track how many calls they're missing between 5 and 9 at night? We actually see people call at 10, 11 at night. It's crazy.
We track that internally. I know that we
Wow.
track it for our clients too, but it's interesting. Most offices, patient base seems pretty trained. Like when office closes, there's not much there. But if you started promoting that, I think that's actually an interesting way to be competitive and capturing stuff, being convenient. And I think I heard that in a couple other podcasts too. Is like, how do you make it easier for the patient, not harder?
Yeah.
That's an interesting strategy.
So that's what we did with contacts. Glasses. So this is another thing. Customers and patients will always look at a frame,
Yeah.
right? And then they could be online looking at the same Nike frame. No one ever asks about lenses. So you can add $1 or $2 increase to your lenses. You don't skip a beat.
To offset like pricing on frame. Yeah. Oh, interesting.
So you can add $5, $10, whatever number you think before that tipping point is,
Yeah.
on the lens side, and you will not lose a sale. But based on your amount of transactions, you can calculate what your increased revenue will be, and it makes up for that loss. So we never look at ourselves, oh, the reimbursements comes down, F them. I'm not taking Davis. I'm not taking VSP. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's a loss leader. It doesn't matter. Whether you're getting 60, 50, or 35 is completely irrelevant because we're not in it for that.
Yeah.
They're driving the patient to us at a cost of 0. So we have a cost of 0 to acquire a customer. What business has that?
Yeah. It's pretty incredible business. Not gonna lie.
Right. So
Yeah.
they're sending us the customer for nothing. So don't complain about it. Thank them for sending you the patient because now you have a shot at that 7 out of 10.
So, I feel like we could talk for hours because this is really
Me
interesting.
too.
This is fun. But as far as I'd like to think like get in your head a little bit for strategy. So I'm going to ask a question here. Greenfield, start where you are now, but moving forward, let's say you double the size, 20, 30, 40, 50 locations. You've already thought about this. How do you approach that problem? Like, how do you expand? Do you do internally expansion, external expansions, vertical expansion? Like talk about that a little bit. Like, well, how would you do it?
So good question. Number one, and we've thought about this, and I have a huge board, right? So we have where all the optometry locations are versus all the ophthalmology. Frankly, in my opinion, optometry is way easier to buy, to acquire, and turn around way quicker because you don't have the bureaucracy of all the credentialing and Medicare and everything that we have on the medical side. So I would go heavy on optometry because I love the business. To go that big would require an entire another level of sophistication on the finance side.
Yeah.
So CFO would need you would need multiple operators. We would have you would require a heavy investment in operators, operations, and finance. So the CFO would require someone underneath him with a heavy finance background. And we have one operator now. It would require another operator. And it's hard. I don't even know the tipping point there because I haven't done it. But looking back, that's what I would do differently going forward if we're going to do that.
Can you
Uh,
tell me a little bit about what your finance person does? Like,
he's an animal.
yeah, like what, like a lot of folks probably don't even know what CFOs do. Tell us a little bit about what your CFO does and how they help your business.
Yeah, so everything is data driven. So he has an entire platform. He's very young. He's in his late 30s. He actually came from a large private equity ophthalmology consolidator.
Okay.
So he was very high up in their finance department, did very, very well, and was like, now it's time to focus on family and kids and not get chipped all over the country. So thank God, literally, we found them, and everything is mapped out financially. So we know days that we make more money. So we have it
Mm.
down Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We already know what the credit card receipts will be based on the volume of patients in our system. So we can predict on the ophthalmology side, it's insanely predictable because we know what the average reimbursement is. Optometry, there's a little give and take because you don't know who's going to buy that day necessarily, right? But he predicts revenue, 3 months ahead of time. So we know, hey, September, I'll be honest with you, one of the worst months we've ever had. It was the worst month. We got absolutely pummeled.
I think a lot of folks felt that, to be honest. Yeah, it's election year, September. Yeah,
And you could feel it coming, but even he didn't predict it would be as bad as it was.
yeah.
And I don't know why. And if you have some advice, I'd love to hear it. But September, for some reason, September and the first 2 or 3 weeks of October, usually very rough for us. But he has everything mapped out weeks in advance, months in advance. So we have the ability to counteract that. So one of the things we learned on the ophthalmology side is deductibles start over in January, right? So no one wants to have cataract surgery January 2nd because they're out of pocket a lot of money, right? So we tell our ophthalmologists it's always been standard in ophthalmology. In December, these guys are nowhere to be found. They're in the Cayman Islands somewhere. Like, wait a minute, take your vacation in January, work your took us off in December because deductibles are already paid. So operate like a machine. More surgery time in the surgery centers opens up in December because all those ophthalmologists want to be in the Cayman Islands, right? So we can crank through more surgeries at 30% higher level in December, receive all that money in January. So our Januaries are massive and let the ophthalmologists, surgical ophthalmologists take off in January when that money becomes way more difficult to collect.
Yeah.
That money's 90 days away chasing deductibles.
And your CFO basically figured that out for you, right? And just
Correct.
brought it to the table. So that's actually, you're right. That's hard to get that level of insight.
And that's just one. And there's even way more. I mean, we know when people are going to buy more over time when you start looking at it. And then you try to figure it out. But if you see there's a tipping point, you can say, hey, how do we get around that? That's coming in 6 weeks. Do we want to do a promotion, a 2-for-1? Because the volumes are going to come down in September.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe we could, it might be a side topic. We reconnect at some point. I'd like to discuss that September effect too, because everyone we talk to and our clients, I think almost to a T, everyone went down. Not everyone, but I think almost everyone did, especially folks with larger presences.
Yeah.
So, um, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's see what makes Richard tick. Like what, can you give me maybe a couple of formative moments in your life? So these are moments that you felt like, you know what, this has really formed me in my, like how I see the world. It can be when you're a kid, it can be in college, could have been last week, who knows? But can you kind of run through that a little bit for me? Like something that's really visceral. You're like, yeah, that really helped change me or formed who I am.
That's a great question. So I can give you a couple of them, right? Uh, the biggest was when you're at a breaking point, and we all have it in life,
Yeah.
whether it's business related, personal. There's going to be a day when the weight comes down on you, and it's not a fun day, or weeks or months, right? So it's how do you get out of this? So defining moment in my life is it's the man upstairs, right? So there was a day, not to go into details, but it was bad. And I'm walking down the street and I'm like, oh my God, like this is really not good. I was literally crying in my own hand because I was really not just business. We all have it, right? It's all coming. And a car pulls over And the guy gets out of the car and just hugged me. And it was a rabbi. I'm Jewish. And then like, wow, he saved me. So that moment taught me, and I've developed an unbelievable relationship with him. Like unbelievable. I mean, we talk almost daily, where he has helped me in every way. So defining moments, I mean, that was it. Because that has helped me when these weights come, and they come, you can breathe, you can think, you're calm because you know there's a bigger partner that's handling it for you.
I, I can definitely empathize with you there. The whole saying, "This too shall pass." Um, it's good for mental exercise, but it was hard for me to understand it until I actually lived it. You're right. It can be tough. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, there's no human way we think we can just box our way through it. It's too heavy.
So getting that support was,
Oh, huge. So that was on the deeper level, and the other thing is just the people you surround yourself with, right? I mean, when you're in those rooms in your college dorm room, and it's like, I'm gonna be this, I'm gonna be that, and you want to prove yourself internally and to your parents and to everyone that came before you, right? Grandparents, like people immigrated, they came over, they didn't come over just for them, they came over so you could have a better life. So you get one shot at this. Why sit on your hands and do nothing with it? Do something, because that's what they came for.
that's really, yeah, that resonates with me for sure. Being
Right.
first generation immigrant.
Yep.
Um, so tell me a little, let's time travel a little bit. If you were to go back 4 days after you graduate OD school, what would you tell yourself, knowing what you know now? So what advice would you give your younger self?
Wow. Listen to older, like you come out very pompous for some reason in a lot of ways, and you meet these older doctors or older people in general, and you think you know better. Oh, this guy has no clue, this guy has no clue. They have a very good clue. So it's like mouth shut, ears open, and listen, because when you listen you can learn, even if that's one tidbit. I mean, I remember one of the things someone told me, and it's absolutely true. And back then we used to do it. Now we're more sophisticated. But if a patient walks in, they're like, "Oh, my daughter's getting married next week." Well, they're excited. If you write that in the chart, the next year they come in, "Mrs. Smith, how was your daughter's wedding?"
That makes a big difference.
Huge.
Yeah.
So now it's part of our, when they check out, the girls type it into the electronic record. So when they come back, everyone sees it, front desk girl. And you got to be careful. You don't want to overdo it. But, you can learn that from just someone talking to you that you might never see again. But if I could go back, it's listen better and be more empathetic to people.
Yeah. That's great. Great insight. And by the way, I do think you said optometrists, maybe some folks come out a little pompous, but I worked with a lot of doctors. I think optometrists are some of the most humble doctors I've worked with. So I used to work at the Cleveland Clinic for a little bit.
Oh, wow.
They knew they were good. So,
Right.
and they were some of the best, world's best, but most of them were really humble, but some folks were like, okay, yeah, you're good. I get it. But I appreciate you sharing. Thank you. Uh,
Thanks.
Richard, tell us a little bit more about you. Anything else you want to share? Or something? So, what do you like to do for fun, interest, hobbies, anything?
Yeah, heavy sports, right? So it's family, family, business, sports,
What sports?
uh, all integrated. Oh, baseball, football. I mean, I could talk that stuff all day.
Oreos and Ravens, right?
Yeah, and anything, right? I follow college
Okay.
football, NFL. I do a lot of CrossFit, so I get up every morning 4:30 in the morning. So
Okay.
the hours between 4:30 and 6:30 is the best 2 hours of the day. No one's bothering me. I've gotten to the point where I'm not going to say I never check my email, but I try not to check my email. So that 2 hours is crucial. Workout and mentally get in the right place in a lot of ways to go to battle, right? Because when you walk out those doors, it's battle.
Yeah. Yeah. The routine, it's always going to come, especially as a leader, right? They all come to you. So,
That's right.
and it's interesting because, well, one thing I'll say is, I'm a little bittersweet. You guys got Derrick Henry being a Titans fan.
He's an animal.
Uh,
That guy's
well,
unbelievable.
well, I'm happy for him. He deserves to. I want him to win a. He's such a good dude. But I'm not a fan of Baltimore. Back from the Eddie George days and Ray
Oh,
Lewis nights.
those were unbelievable. Like Ray Lewis and Eddie
Yeah,
George.
yeah. Those are a little bittersweet, I guess. But it's okay. Well, cool. So Adam, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, so my it's Levin LEVINIEYE.com. My emails are levin@levini.com. And you can text me, right? 410-207-3639. Might not get back to you right away. I promise you that, but I will get back to you at some point. Because my job today is not only to help me and internal, but it's to help others, right? Because we're all in this together at some level. So for sure. And I look for help too, all the time.
That's great. Well, thank you again, Dr. Richard Levine, for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you, audience. If you've learned something today or laughed, or if you really if you found anything interesting, please share it and like the podcast or YouTube video. And thank you again, Dr. Levine. This has been another great episode of Optometrist Building Empires. We'll see you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrist Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.